I'm now going to hand over to Etienne, who's been noting your questions and stuff, and so we can have the questions and answer session. Etienne, I'm all ears.
And the first one is for you, Philip, of course. Do you have any plan to translate your book into English? I imagine you get this question often, but I've not heard your thoughts.
Uh, well, I used to be able to fairly easily say no, and sorry, I haven't had the time, but Etienne, who's one of our very keen and proficient AI users in the company, keeps telling me, I could get it translated overnight, and so we probably should do something about it. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm English, and yet my book is in French, and there is no English version. And it's just I'm a perfectionist. It's the book was written in 30 years ago now, before many things, before SAP and internet, and so I feel it's not fair to just translate it because it would feel outdated. And yet it's true that nearly everything that I say about how you manage a factory is still completely valid. The ideas of the goal, and therefore the ideas of my book, which is piggybacking on the goal, explaining how you do it, are still perfectly pertinent. So right now, knowing Etienne, I'm going to be under some pressure to get the English version of the book published. Yes, but unfortunately, right now it's not. It's only in French. My fault.
Another question: when switching people from one project to another to help a struggling project, how long does it take them to get up to speed? How does this relate to the bad effects of multitasking?
Multitasking. I gave a training course this morning, and we went through the multitasking game once again. For those who don't know it, have a look. It's a simple game where people they have to do odd numbers, even numbers, letters of the alphabet, and write the critical chain. They do it in monotask and then multitask. Just by this silly game, we managed to get people to make mistakes where they don't know what the odd numbers are, or what the letters of the alphabet are in the right order. Multitasking is bad, and unfortunately, it's got worse and worse because of mobile phone messages and the modern work environment. So we often measure multitasking, and we find surprisingly that it's nearly always around 60 switches or tasks per day, right? Which is about 5-7 minutes on average on one particular task in these engineering, design offices or other intellectual work environments, which is just crazy. If you're working on a very complex project, if you're doing some complex programming or whatever, you don't want to be interrupted every 5 minutes, right? So it's really one of the killers of performance and quality of life. You turn something easy into something stressful by doing it in multitasking. How long does it take to switch back to a task? Well, the studies, and I would say I agree with the numbers that one sees, is if the task is a little complicated, right? It's more likely to be sort of between 10 and 20 minutes before you're right back up to speed than 2 minutes, right? Typically, it's a project that maybe you dropped a week ago and you some come back to it. It's going to take you about more like 10 to 20 minutes before you get back up to speed. So that's the kind of loss you have, and it's huge. It's huge, and so we talk a lot about that when we're implementing critical chain, because we want to reduce. You don't eliminate multitasking, but you want to reduce it. And critical chain helps a lot because you get much more stable priorities. I hope that's answered the question. Has it, Etienne? Do you think?
So we have other questions. Has critical chain ever been used on blue sky research as opposed to applied research and product development?
Has it? I'm not sure. I don't know of it being applied in that way, and I'm not sure that it should be. There's a limited domain of applicability of critical chain. Critical chain, you're meant to be able to say more or less what tasks you're going to be doing one after the other. What is the sequence of tasks to get to the end? And in pure research projects, you don't actually know where you're going to go, right? It's more like detective work. The ideas of critical chain probably won't help much. To corroborate that, I don't know personally, and I know I've been following this business for a long, long time, how for pure blue sky research projects it could work. I mean, developing a car engine from scratch, yes, when it's you're in the same technology and so forth, but something completely new where you start from a blank page of paper when you want to prove a concept of something, it might not be applicable.
Do you have any quick tips or follow up reading on how to address the pushback about limiting WIP. But we can't stop working on that project, even though they haven't actually worked on it for a month.
I repeat, the first thing we do, and that often helps, is to Little's law calculation. How many projects you have divided by how many projects you finish a year equals so such and such an average. Okay. But apparently the person's already doing it, pointing out that, hey, this project hasn't moved for the last month. Nobody's worked on it, and so forth. So that's a real challenge. You can get around it, I think, by asking them to publish a single list of priorities. What are the priorities of your projects in your portfolio, and make sure that is public, and there is only one list, right? Everybody's aligned around the same list, and then you really make sure that you work on the priority projects and not the others. And if there's too much work in the portfolio, that means that the projects that are not a priority will not be worked on. It'll be as if they were frozen, or as if you dropped them, simply because nobody's working on them anymore. Okay, but if I'm guessing the reason for the question is, the problem is that they're feeling undue or illegitimate pressure from some department or whatever, forcing them to move ahead with a project which shouldn't be worked on. And that's, I guess, more of a political problem than a technical scheduling problem.
And one last question. How do you convince an Indian project team member to follow critical change project management principles? Although benefits and principles were explained and the project going badly, the team does not change their behavior, although they verbally say they agree.
In English, we say they're paying lip service to the ideas, that say, yes, we will do that, but in fact, they're not obeying the rules and the ideas of critical chain. Is that how you understood the question, Etienne?
The principles were explained, but still, they don't apply the critical chain rules. So how do you convince them? And in fact, is it a matter of convincing them?
Normally, it so happens I gave a conference specifically on the subject recently with TOCICO in the Critical Chain annual conference, and it went into how we implement in more detail. And what we do is we take the time to explain to people what the logic is, but in such a way as they are convinced of the pertinence and intelligence of those ideas, and that is how we get around any resistance to change. They come out of these training courses wanting to apply it. It's not as if it was some new stupid idea of the boss that they fake implementing, or say they're implementing but don't actually do. We've convinced them that these are good ideas, and so they actually actively adopt them rather than feeling that they've been forced to adopt them, right? We seduce people with the pertinence of the rules of critical chain and the approach of critical chain, so that everybody wants to do it. In our case, it's kind of strange, but it happens so systematically. Again, it's happening right now, this morning. We go through the training courses of about one day. We explain the principles right down to the details, so they understand the beauty of the logic of critical chain. And they come out of these in small groups of less than 20 people, whatever. And at the end of their training course, they say, yeah, I agree, this is fantastic. I love the fever chart and whatever. This is fantastic. But they will never understand. And the they is not in the room. The they can be their boss. It can be marketing. It can be the client. It can be somebody not in the room. That happens. That's why when we do it, we try to repeat the same seduction process at all levels of the organization. The boardroom, the clients, the different departments, marketing, engineering, production, and so forth, that everybody knows what is going to be done, and they all get seduced by the approach. And once that's done, the resistance to change is over. You just have to turn it on. They'll see these fantastic results, both in terms of money making and in terms of quality of life, and go from there. It'll go nice and easy. Okay, so we managed to do this with very, very little resistance to change, and success feeds to success, I believe, in our case, because we're just very confident of doing it and getting it right, because we don't know what this kind of resistance looks like, because we don't trigger that. We have lots of exciting people who are ambassadors of critical change, who go around and harassing people saying, hey, do you know critical chain, whatever. Anyway, So I hope that answered at least partially the question. Make sure that they were seduced by the ideas of critical training. It wasn't just explaining what the rules are. They have to understand why these rules are so pertinent and powerful, so they adopted them. I believe that's it. Thank you very much for listening in. I say goodbye to you all, and see you at the next webinar maybe. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.